Hi there. Welcome to week 5 of 52. As a reminder, my name is Erin. I'm the owner of Emma K Enterprises and publisher by the author named Emma K of Women's Wellness Playbook for Success. Great tool, 3-in-1, cortisol detox success, mindfulness success, and hormone balance success for women. Great guide. I'm also a mom, a wife. I'm in my late 40s, starting perimenopause. I am a business professional, own my own business, and really working on my own personal health and wellness journey. So hence the 52 weeks. And those of you that have been with me for the 4 weeks so far, and we're now on week 5, this week we're gonna focus on hormones. Hormones can have a big impact on our overall health and wellness, whether it be that hormones are out of balance and our hormones need to be supported back into balance to help our overall health and wellness, or maybe even more commonly, we just need to support our hormones so they function most appropriately for our overall health and wellness. So today I'm going to talk about some key hormones, how they impact your body, and then how we can support our hormones, because on my 52-week journey, I'm really taking all the things that I've learned to write Women's Wellness Playbook for Success, applying it to my own life so that I can help ensure that I'm staying energized, my hormones are managed appropriately, I can support the weight that I want to be at, make sure I'm getting movement through the day, outside time, and staying energized and calm, and so I can do the things I want to do in my life as well as support my family as well overall. And so let's talk about hormones today. Overall, when we think about hormones, I want you to understand that hormones are really chemical messengers. So hormones support different parts of our body. Oftentimes, hormones work together. So if something might be out of balance or out of sync, it might just not be one thing. It might be how things are working together, because our hormones are these messengers supporting different parts of our body, supporting our reproductive health, our period, our menstruation. It's also supporting our bone health, our muscles, our cardiovascular health. Helps with stress management, our metabolism. So there's a lot of things. And oftentimes what we're talking about when we talk about hormones is hormone imbalances and symptoms of hormone imbalance. We will talk about that a bit and how to support that, or if you need to go to your doctor at a certain point and try to get things beyond just good nutrition, movement, sunlight, things like that, to support your overall health and wellness. But let's start by understanding a little bit about the main hormones that really impact our health and wellness and that we think about. Then we can get into some ways to support them, and then how to approach doctors if need be, if we do have imbalances. So let's start with estrogen. Estrogen is probably one hormone that's talked about a lot. When it comes to the female body, estrogen supports many different things within our body, but it also isn't the single hormone that supports some of these things. As we talk through the different hormones, you'll find that estrogen works together with other hormones to help our bodies function appropriately. So estrogen is really one of the hormones that support our menstrual and reproductive health. It supports our bone health. It supports our vaginal and urinary health as well, the tissue there. It supports brain function as well as our heart health or cardiovascular health. And so it's interesting as we talk about estrogen, and as we get older, our estrogen naturally falls, and so this is what puts us into perimenopause state and then eventually menopause and postmenopause, as our estrogen naturally dips as we get older. And when we think about symptoms of estrogen decreases, there's a lot of things around brain fog, heart palpitations, our period becomes less often. Eventually with menopause, it goes away completely. We talk about our bones, and our bones need more support. They become more brittle as we get older, but it's not necessarily because we're older, it's because of that hormone, estrogen, that helps support. And even things with sexual reproduction and sexual health and vaginal health are impacted with estrogen decreasing. One of the things with estrogen and really all of the hormones is there are natural fluctuations though. So naturally, as we get older as women, our estrogen is going to go down, and there's things we can do to help support that, so we can continue to feel energized and support those areas of our body like our bone health and our cardiovascular health, to make sure that we're still staying well and functioning and doing the things that we want to. But also, even in our prime youth, so to speak, before our estrogen starts to naturally dip, estrogen fluctuates through the course of the month. So this is why a lot of doctors out there, health providers out there, and I even have it on my blog and talk about it in my book, is around your cycle. So estrogen naturally increases and decreases with your cycle each month. And there's ways to support different phases of your cycle, and the ebbs and flows of your estrogen throughout your cycle. So that's going to naturally fluctuate. Next, let's talk about progesterone. So progesterone is something that really supports ovulation. It supports fertility. Progesterone goes up after you ovulate. It supports the uterus and pregnancy. But one of the things, progesterone really works with estrogen. So I had mentioned earlier that sometimes hormones don't work alone. Our bodies need, as women, need both estrogen and progesterone to support our cycles, to support ovulation, fertility, being able to carry a baby. And what often happens is when we see fluctuations in progesterone, again, because progesterone is going to fluctuate just like estrogen, progesterone fluctuations is where you start to see the different stages of your cycle. It impacts your PMS symptoms. So like prior to your cycle, it can impact your fertility. It can be some of the starting points of drops in progesterone as the starting points of perimenopause as well. The next one is testosterone, and testosterone is one that often gets confused because it's thought of as a male hormone, which it is. And so there's testosterone and other male hormones in the female body, and it's often referred to androgens. So those are the female or the male sex hormones that are in female bodies. Now, in females, we don't have as much testosterone or androgens as the male body, but we do need them to support our body. And again, it is part of the hormones, the set of hormones that support many different things. But oftentimes testosterone supports overall general wellness. It supports sexual function. It supports muscle health or bone health, which also estrogen does as well. And it also helps muscle health as well. And one of the interesting things about testosterone is it's going to always be prevalent in the female body. But oftentimes you can start to see signs of high testosterone, which could be related to things like PCOS. If you start to see a lot of acne, or you start to see hair in areas that typically are not on the female body, whether it be your chest or your chin. And so while testosterone is important, we want to make sure that we're not getting an abundance of testosterone into our bodies and start to get those symptoms of too much testosterone. The next hormone we want to talk about is cortisol. Now, cortisol is often misunderstood. I want to clear the air. Cortisol is necessary to everyday function. Cortisol helps with metabolism, stress management, blood pressure, blood glucose. So just like the other hormones, the estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, cortisol does support various functions within our body. Now, the problem is a lot of people have an abundance of cortisol. So based on modern lifestyles, technology, not getting enough movement, diet, lots of processed foods, fatty foods, sugar, our cortisol is raised and raised all the time. And the body doesn't want that. The body doesn't need that. The body needs cortisol to manage some of those things that we talked about, but it doesn't need too much. If you have too much cortisol, your body is constantly in a state of stress. And so, like I said, it often happens from high stress and not being able to manage it. We all have stress. We all have stressful jobs, busy schedules, kids, spouses, parents that might be aging, whatever it might be. We all have stress, but it's how we manage that stress, and that's why mindfulness is really important. And so we'll cover a whole section on mindfulness, but it's also in my book and on my blogs on emmakenterprises.com. But it's how we manage that stress and de-escalate that stress versus staying constantly stressed. So not being able to manage stressful situations, constantly on our phones and technology, not giving our minds mental breaks, and just always looking at a screen that does not give our mind a break, not getting sleep. And it's also kind of a catch-22 because cortisol supports our sleep-awake schedule and that rhythm, but also if we're not giving ourselves the proper rest and sleep, we're going to naturally elevate that cortisol and keep it high where it should actually be low in the evenings. In the evenings and through the night is when it's at its lowest, and then in the morning to wake you up is when it starts to increase, and then it naturally fluctuates through the day based on things that you have going on and stressful situations and putting your body in stress. But it should naturally go back down, and you should be able to manage it back down and not have it go up and just stay up. Because otherwise you're never going to fall asleep at night. You're never going to get that rest you need. You're constantly going to feel wired, constantly going to feel like your body's on edge and off. The next one, let's talk about insulin and blood sugar. So insulin is really important. So if you have any type of insulin sensitivity or insulin resistance, that can be associated with prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, and PCOS. But things that will help with insulin and insulin resistance or blood sugar issues is really making sure that you have a balanced meal through the day. We talked about this in our last video of how it's important to have protein, fiber, and healthy fats. This helps to regulate your the sugar, your glucose in your bloodstream, and the insulin in your bloodstream, so you don't have spikes. And when you're spiking and then bottoming out with your insulin, it just has that, like, you have a quick sugar rush, which is never great, and then you crash. And so this really creates these highs and these lows through your day. So it's important to keep a steady stream. We just also talked about cortisol. If you're constantly spiking and then crashing your insulin and the glucose in your bloodstream, it's going to elevate your cortisol levels because you're stressing your body out and you're not maintaining that blood sugar in your body. It's important to move as well. So regular exercise and movement, and we've talked about that before. It's part of our morning routine, our evening routine, and our daily routine. Again, just those usual things are really going to help with insulin and blood sugar. So walking after meals to help regulate that, and getting the proper sleep at night as well. The next one is around the thyroid, and thyroid is really interesting, and I'm gonna take a moment to go on a personal story here for a moment and talk about how normal can be different for everyone. So several years ago, before I had my daughter, I was trying to get pregnant. My husband and I were trying to have a baby, and we were having a lot of trouble. And so I went to a specialist and went through the fertility process. And in doing so, my doctor wanted to check my thyroid. And I had had it done before. I'd get my physical done every year, and it's always been normal. And my fertility doctor actually said, "Hey, I feel like your hormones, your thyroid is off a little bit, and I want to put you on a low dose of medication to help stabilize it." And I had never thought twice about it. And he had even said, a traditional doctor may say that it's normal, and you're within range, but it is a little high. And so we want to make sure your body and the environment that we're trying to make a baby and have a baby in is perfect. And so while it might have been normal, it was not optimal. And so my fertility doctor helped me put me in a position where my thyroid was at optimal levels. And so this is where it goes to normal is different for everyone. Optimal is different for everyone. And at the end, as I mentioned, we'll talk a little bit about how to track these things and advocate for yourself. Because if your hormones are out of balance, or if you're not supporting your hormones, it's going to be very hard for you to have optimal health, because your hormones are those chemical messengers supporting all these things in your body. So if something's not feeling right, whether it needs the support of medication or it just needs the support of the proper diet, sleep, exercise, it's needed in order to make you feel your best and help you feel your best. But when we think about thyroid is another hormone that influences a lot of things. So it influences your metabolism, your body temperature, heart rate, your energy. So we were just talking about energy. You need energy to be able to do the things you want to do. It also supports digestion, your menstrual cycle. So a lot of things are involved in your thyroid. So if that hormone is low or high, those could have different impacts on your overall health that may need to be managed. So common things that are associated with thyroid imbalances is fatigue, weight changes, like if the hormone is high, you often lose weight. If the hormone is low, you often gain weight. Hair changes and mood changes. There's a lot that could be associated with the thyroid. So it's important to get that optimal. And so one of the things that I had mentioned earlier is hormones can naturally fluctuate on their own. Specifically with women's sexual and reproductive hormones. Those are going to naturally increase and decrease as your cycle goes on. They can also naturally change as you age and as you go through different stages. So starting with like puberty, then your reproductive years, where you're getting pregnant or ovulating, getting pregnant, postpartum. And then you get into things like perimenopause and menopause and postmenopause, where those hormones are going to fluctuate. But naturally, just through the course of the day, or the course of a month, your hormones can go up and down. Also, hormones can change, other hormones, not just your sexual hormones, can change. So we had talked about cortisol. Through the day, your cortisol naturally changes. It elevates in the morning and slowly goes down through the day, and it helps with that awake sleep schedule. And so you actually don't want your cortisol to stay the same all day long, because then it can mess with that. Your thyroid may adjust over the day or over the month. Your insulin's going to adjust based on eating behaviors and exercise and activity as well. But the idea is to balance that out to keep your insulin and your blood sugar at a relatively steady state, so you're not having those big fluctuations of peaks and valleys or crashes, which are going to impact your energy. And so for a minute, let's talk about how to support your hormones generally. And so there's some key things. You might have heard some common things that I said and with different hormones, but a lot of them really tie to each other. And they are all supported by some just common everyday things. So first is nutrition and having fully balanced meals, making sure that you're having your protein, fiber, and your healthy fats, making sure that you're getting your fiber and your carbohydrates from things like vegetables, fruits, whole grains, so that that blood sugar can stabilize, but it also helps your other hormones as well. Movement is very important. Exercise, getting outside and getting walks is important. Sleep. If you think of nothing else, start with at least sleep and rest. Your body, your hormones, your overall health always needs sleep. It needs rest. It needs at least 7 hours of sleep a night to just recharge, replenish, and get your body ready for the next day. Stress management is also really important. We talked about it specifically with cortisol, but stress management also is supported across all the hormones and helps to manage all your hormones. And when it comes to stress management, we don't have to meditate. We can just take time to take a minute to deep breathe. In the morning, do some breathing techniques. Through the day when you're in stressful situations, do breathing techniques. Be mindful in your commute each day, or when you're washing the dishes at night, or when you're cooking dinner. Just trying to manage that. Also, find ways to reduce the stress in your day. In some of my other videos, I've given different tips on how to prepare the night before to set yourself up for a good morning and a productive morning and a stress-free morning. So there's things that you can do through your day to help your day be less stressful. Preventative health care. Now, I know doctors can be overwhelming. Sometimes getting tests can be overwhelming. It is critically important to understand your everyday normal health. You need to go to your doctor every year. You need to get your regular blood tests in every year. You need to get your tests that you have to do every 2, 3, 5, 7, 10, whatever it is year. Especially as we get older, we have different things as women that we need to do. We need to get our PAPs. We need to get our mammograms, and then we need to get our colonoscopies. And so these things are very important. They can be intimidating and overwhelming, but it's important to understand what your body does in a normal state, like how it's acting all the time, so that way if something is off, you know that it's off, or you can see that it's off, even if it's still in a normal range. So I'll use my husband as an example. His blood pressure is always extremely low. And so whenever he tries to elevate his blood pressure, his elevated blood pressure is what would typically be normal for other people. So if he didn't know that, and if he didn't go through that regularly, when he would have to go through a stress test or have to try to elevate his blood pressure, they may be stand there for 2 hours and still not get to the blood pressure that is normal for escalation, because naturally he just never gets there. So we're all a little different. Everybody's normal is a little different. So it's important to know your numbers. It's important to keep track of that. Go to your doctor regularly. Get those regular blood tests every year. Get the tests that you need as your life stages and as you age, and when you're supposed to appropriately get your PAPs and your mammograms and your colonoscopies and everything else out there. And then that ties into the last piece. When it comes to hormones, know your patterns. It's really important to track. So I highly encourage you to track your cycle, understand your cycle, when you're getting your period, when you're in the various phases of your cycle. It's also important to track other things about your hormones. So things like your moods, things like your energy, how you sleep, how you feel after you sleep, how you feel with the different phases of your cycle, how you feel from exercising, how much you're exercising, how you feel from exercising, what certain foods do or don't do when you consume them. So between having your regular health checks and tracking your symptoms and regular feelings and reactions to things through the year. This helps prepare you to understand if there's anything that's out of whack or getting deregulated, or if you're starting to think that your estrogen's going down in your older age, because nobody has the same types of hormones in their body. We all have the same hormones, but our hormones are not always the same. Everybody's a little bit different. Everybody's normal is a little bit different. So it's important to be an advocate for yourself and track for yourself. Now, if you are seeing some symptoms and signs of hormone imbalances, I would encourage you, again, make sure you continue to track, but also start working on some of the things we talked about: your diet, your exercise, your sleep, your stress management. But if those things are not helping and your symptoms are becoming extreme, like extreme mood swings, you can't sleep, your hot flashes, sex can be painful, heavy bleeding, cramps, that's when you go see your doctor. And that's when you talk to your doctor and talk to them about what you're experiencing. What's normal? Get tests to see if there's something off from your normal. Share your symptoms, share your tracking. But also take a look at getting Women's Wellness Playbook for Success. It has a whole section on women's hormones. It talks about what tests to get, what tests to ask your doctor for, what's the normal range, so you can at least understand normal, even if your normal is a little bit different. It also gives you questions to ask with your doctor as well. So here's how you can advocate for yourself. So that is our week 5, talking all about women's hormones and how we can start to make changes each day to regulate our hormones, support our hormones to help with our overall health. Thanks for watching. Bye.